How to harness the power of a dietary pattern that has been shown to dramatically increase longevity, but has somehow remained under the radar for most of us. I'm often asked what's the single most impactful change someone can make to live longer, and while there's rarely a one-size-fits-all answer in nutrition, there is compelling evidence pointing to one particular eating pattern. For decades, we've been bombarded with diet trends promising miraculous results: keto, paleo, carnivore, vegan, the list goes on. But what if I told you that the most powerful longevity diet isn't trendy or restrictive? It's actually been hiding in plain sight, backed by some of the most comprehensive research in nutritional science. The Mediterranean diet consistently emerges as the gold standard when examining populations with exceptional longevity. But here's what you might not realize: it's not just about eating olive oil and fish. The true power lies in the Blue Zone's pattern of eating: plant-forward, nutrient-dense, and surprisingly diverse. These Blue Zones, regions where people routinely live to 100 in good health, show us that longevity isn't about restriction but about abundance of the right foods. What makes this approach so effective yet overlooked is its simplicity. You don't need special supplements or to eliminate entire food groups. The foundation is whole, minimally processed foods that your grandparents would recognize. Vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains, nuts, seeds, and quality proteins form the backbone of this pattern. But crucially, it's not just what these centenarians eat but how they eat, communally, mindfully, and with genuine pleasure. I've seen clients transform their health markers in just weeks when adopting this approach. Blood pressure normalizes, inflammation markers decrease, and energy levels soar. What's particularly fascinating is how this eating pattern appears to influence our genetic expression, literally turning on longevity pathways that might otherwise remain dormant. The secret ingredient that's often missed in discussions about longevity diets is consistency over restriction. You don't need to be perfect. The occasional indulgence won't erase your progress. What matters is your pattern over time. The most successful centenarians aren't those who never taste chocolate or wine. They're those who've established sustainable, enjoyable eating habits they can maintain for decades. If you take one thing from this discussion, let it be this: the most powerful longevity diet isn't about what you eliminate, it's about what you include. Fill your plate with colorful plants, enjoy meals with loved ones, savor each bite, and recognize that nourishing your body is an act of self-respect, not punishment. Your future self will thank you for the investment you're making today. How to increase your lifespan through simple dietary changes that most people overlook. I've spent years researching longevity, and what fascinates me is how often we chase complicated solutions while ignoring the simplest ones right in front of us. You might be surprised to learn that many centenarians across the globe don't follow strict diet plans or expensive supplement regimens. Instead, they naturally incorporate principles that modern science is only now confirming. The secret isn't about restriction, it's about embracing abundance of the right foods. When I visited the Blue Zones, regions where people routinely live past 100, I noticed something remarkable. Their diets are predominantly plant-based, not necessarily vegetarian, but definitely plant-forward. These communities typically derive 95% of their nutrition from plants and legumes, with meat serving as a garnish rather than a main course. What's particularly interesting is the role of beans in these longevity diets. In Nicoya, Costa Rica, black beans appear at nearly every meal. In Okinawa, it's soybeans. In Sardinia, chickpeas and fava beans. This isn't coincidence. Legumes provide an optimal combination of protein, fiber, and complex carbohydrates without the inflammatory properties of some animal products. You might wonder if genetics plays the primary role in their longevity, but research suggests otherwise. When people from these regions adopt Western diets, their health advantages disappear within a generation. The environment, particularly food choices, appears to be the dominant factor. I'm not suggesting you need to make dramatic overnight changes. Small, consistent adjustments can make remarkable differences over time. Perhaps begin by incorporating a beans and greens meal twice weekly, or adopt the Japanese practice of hara-hachi-bu, eating until you're 80% full, rather than completely stuffed. What continues to amaze me is how these traditional diets naturally align with what cutting-edge nutritional science now recommends. They're rich in antioxidants, contain healthy fats, provide balanced macronutrients, and support a healthy gut microbiome, all factors now linked to extended health span. The most powerful insight I've gained from this research is that longevity isn't just about adding years to your life, it's about adding life to your years. The centenarians I've met aren't just old, they're vibrant, engaged, and surprisingly free of the chronic conditions we often associate with aging. So perhaps the diet you've been ignoring isn't some exotic superfood regimen or restrictive eating pattern. It might simply be the traditional, plant-centered approach that sustained human health for centuries before processed foods dominated our landscape. And the wonderful thing is, this way of eating isn't just good for your health, it's delicious, affordable, and accessible to almost everyone. How to extend your lifespan through diet, the secret you've been overlooking. Have you ever wondered why certain populations around the world consistently live longer, healthier lives? The answer might be simpler than you think, and it's probably sitting right in your kitchen. When I first started researching longevity, I was overwhelmed by complicated supplement regimens and extreme exercise protocols. But what if the most powerful longevity tool is actually just what you eat every day? The evidence certainly points in that direction. Take the Mediterranean diet, for instance. People living in these coastal regions consistently rank among the longest living populations on Earth. Their diet is rich in olive oil, fresh vegetables, legumes, and fish, while being relatively low in red meat and processed foods. But it's not just about what they eat, it's about their relationship with food. They savor meals slowly, often with family and friends, turning nutrition into a social experience. You might be thinking this is just another diet fad, but the research is compelling. Studies consistently show that adopting a Mediterranean-style eating pattern can reduce your risk of heart disease by up to 30%, lower your chances of developing type 2 diabetes, and even protect your brain from cognitive decline as you age. What I find most fascinating is how this way of eating emphasizes whole foods rather than specific nutrients. You're not counting macros or obsessing over protein grams, you're simply enjoying real food in its most natural state. This makes it sustainable for the long term, unlike many restrictive diets that leave you feeling deprived. Another powerful approach is the plant-forward diet seen in the blue zones, regions where people routinely live to 100 and beyond. In Okinawa, Japan, for example, the traditional diet consists of about 80% plant foods. These centenarians aren't vegans, but they use meat sparingly, almost as a garnish rather than a centerpiece of meals. Perhaps the most overlooked aspect of longevity diets is what they don't include. Processed foods, with their cocktail of preservatives, artificial flavors, and refined sugars, are notably absent from traditional diets in long-lived populations. Your body wasn't designed to process these modern inventions, and the evidence suggests they may be accelerating aging at the cellular level. The good news is that you don't need to make dramatic changes overnight. Start by incorporating more colorful vegetables into your meals, swap refined grains for whole versions, and try using olive oil instead of butter or processed vegetable oils. Small, consistent changes add up to significant benefits over time. Remember, the goal isn't just to live longer, it's to live better. The fascinating thing about these longevity diets is that they don't just add years to your life, they add life to your years. The same dietary patterns that help you live longer also protect against chronic diseases that can diminish your quality of life. So next time you're at the grocery store, think of your cart as an investment in your future self. The choices you make today can determine not just how long you will live, but how well you'll live in those later years. And isn't that what we're all really after? The secret to living longer, the diet you've been ignoring. How to add years to your life with a diet that's been hiding in plain sight. Have you ever wondered why certain populations around the world consistently live longer, healthier lives? I've spent years researching this question, and the answer isn't some expensive supplement or complicated exercise routine. It's much simpler, and it's something you've probably been overlooking. When we talk about longevity, we often focus on the blue zones, regions where people regularly live past 100 years old. Places like Okinawa in Japan, Sardinia in Italy, and Ikaria in Greece. What's fascinating isn't just that people there live longer, but that they remain vibrant and active well into their advanced years. And at the center of their lifestyle is a pattern of eating that's remarkably consistent across these diverse cultures. The diet I'm talking about isn't trendy or complicated. It's primarily plant-based, with roughly 95% of daily food coming from vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes. Animal products are consumed sparingly, often just a few times a month. It's not about restriction but about abundance, filling your plate with colorful, nutrient-dense foods that your body recognizes and knows how to use efficiently. What makes this approach so powerful is its emphasis on whole foods. These communities aren't eating processed foods with ingredients you can't pronounce. They're eating real food, often grown locally, prepared simply, and enjoyed communally. The nutrients in these whole foods work synergistically in ways that no supplement can replicate, supporting everything from your immune system to your gut microbiome. Speaking of your gut, this is where the magic really happens. When you shift to this primarily plant-based way of eating, you're essentially feeding the trillions of beneficial bacteria that live in your digestive system. These microbes repay the favor by producing compounds that reduce inflammation, improve your mood, and even help regulate your weight. It's like having a pharmaceutical factory inside you, but instead of taking pills, you're just eating delicious, whole foods. But there's something else these long-lived communities share beyond their diet. They move naturally throughout their day. They're not spending hours at the gym, but they're walking, gardening, and staying active in ways that complement their eating habits. This natural movement, combined with their nutrient-dense diet, creates a powerful foundation for longevity. What's most encouraging about this approach is how accessible it is. You don't need expensive ingredients or complicated recipes. Start by simply adding more plant foods to your plate, an extra serving of vegetables at dinner, a handful of nuts as a snack, or beans instead of meat in your favorite soup. Small changes add up, and your body will thank you with each wholesome bite. Remember, this isn't about perfection or rigid rules. The longest-lived people still enjoy modest amounts of wine with friends, celebrate with special foods, and find joy in their meals. The key difference is that these indulgences are occasional pleasures, not daily habits. So if you've been chasing the latest diet trend or magic bullet for health, perhaps it's time to look at what humans have known for centuries. The path to a longer, more vibrant life might just be as simple as returning to the whole, plant-centered foods that have sustained us throughout human history. Your future self is counting on the choices you make today. Why not choose what's worked for the healthiest, longest-lived people on the planet? The secret to living longer, the diet you've been ignoring. How to extend your life through simple dietary changes that most people overlook. You know, I've been thinking a lot about longevity lately. Not just living longer, but living better during those extra years. And what fascinates me is that the answer might be sitting right on our plates. When you look at the regions of the world where people consistently live past 100, places like Okinawa in Japan, Sardinia in Italy, or Ikaria in Greece, you notice something striking. These people aren't following complicated diet plans or buying expensive supplements. They're simply eating whole, natural foods that have been part of their cultural traditions for generations. What if I told you that the most effective longevity diet isn't some trendy new eating pattern, but rather an approach that humans have been following for centuries in certain parts of the world? The research keeps pointing to the same conclusion. a predominantly plant-based diet rich in vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, and nuts, with moderate amounts of fish, and limited dairy, meat, and sugar. You might be thinking, that sounds like the Mediterranean diet, and you'd be partially right. But it's actually broader than that. It's about adopting principles found across all the world's longevity hotspots. The key isn't just what these people eat, but how they eat, slowly, mindfully, and often in community with others. When you start looking at the science, it becomes clear why this eating pattern works. The high fiber content supports your gut microbiome, which we now know plays a crucial role in everything from immunity to brain health. The abundance of antioxidants fights cellular damage. The healthy fats support your cardiovascular system. And the relative absence of processed foods means you're not bombarding your body with inflammatory compounds. But perhaps the most overlooked aspect of these traditional diets is their sustainability, both environmentally and personally. You can actually enjoy this way of eating for decades without getting bored or feeling deprived. It's not about restriction, it's about abundance of the right foods. I think one reason many of us ignore this approach is that it seems too simple. We've been conditioned to believe that health must be complicated, that we need special products or precise calculations. But what if the secret has always been right in front of us, hiding in plain sight? So I challenge you to look at your plate differently. Ask yourself not just, will this make me thin, but will this make me healthy for the long run? Because longevity isn't just about adding years to your life, it's about adding life to your years. How to live longer by embracing the diet you've been overlooking. I've been thinking a lot about longevity lately, not just living more years, but enjoying quality, vibrant health throughout those years. And I've discovered something fascinating. There's a dietary approach that consistently appears in the world's longest living communities, yet most of us completely ignore it. When you look at the blue zones, those rare regions where people routinely live into their 90s and 100s with remarkable vitality, you notice they don't follow trendy diets or count macros. Instead, they primarily eat plant-based foods, with minimal animal products. Their meals are centered around vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and fruits. Meat is typically consumed just a few times per month, almost as a garnish rather than the main event. What strikes me most is how this contradicts so much of our modern nutritional dogma. You've likely been bombarded with messages about protein requirements, keto diets, or paleo eating. But the evidence from longevity hotspots tells a different story. These centenarians aren't measuring protein shakes or avoiding carbs. They're simply eating whole, minimally processed plant foods in their natural state. I believe we have overcomplicated nutrition. When you examine the research objectively, the longest living populations share remarkably similar eating patterns despite being separated by oceans and cultures. They consume abundant fiber-rich plants, very little processed food, and treat animal products as occasional rather than daily staples. What's particularly striking is how these diets naturally regulate caloric intake without counting. The high fiber content creates satiety while maintaining a lower caloric density than modern Western diets. Your body feels satisfied while consuming fewer calories, a crucial factor in longevity research. The benefits extend beyond just lifespan. These plant-centered diets are associated with dramatically lower rates of heart disease, diabetes, certain cancers, and cognitive decline. You're not just adding years, you're adding healthy, functional years where you can remain active and engaged with life. I'm not suggesting you need to become strictly vegetarian or vegan overnight. Rather, I encourage you to shift your perspective on what constitutes the center of your plate. Consider building meals around vegetables, legumes, and whole grains, with animal products playing a supporting role rather than being the star attraction. This approach also aligns beautifully with environmental sustainability. You're reducing your carbon footprint while simultaneously improving your health prospects, a rare win-win in today's world. If you're intrigued by living longer and better, I encourage you to experiment with this dietary pattern. Start by adding more plant foods to your regular rotation and gradually reducing your dependency on animal products and processed foods. Pay attention to how you feel. Many people report increased energy, better digestion, and improved mood within just weeks of making these changes. Remember, the goal isn't dietary perfection or following rigid rules. It's about aligning your eating patterns more closely with those that have proven most successful for human longevity across diverse cultures and environments. Your future self might thank you for the dietary choices you make today. The secret to living longer, the diet you've been ignoring. How to truly nourish your body for a longer, healthier life. This question has been on my mind lately as I've been diving into research on longevity. It's fascinating how we are constantly bombarded with new diet trends promising miraculous results, yet we often overlook time-tested eating patterns that have sustained entire populations for generations. I recently came across studies on the blue zones, regions where people commonly live well into their 90s and even 100s with remarkable vitality. What struck me wasn't just how long these people live, but how well they live, remaining active, sharp, and engaged until their final days. And at the center of their lifestyle, a predominantly plant-based diet that's remained largely unchanged for centuries. You might be thinking, not another lecture about vegetables, but hear me out. These centenarians aren't following complicated meal plans or counting macros. Their approach is refreshingly simple. They eat primarily whole foods grown locally, with meat used sparingly as a side dish or flavor enhancer rather than the main event. Beans, greens, whole grains, nuts, and seasonal fruits form the foundation of nearly every meal. What's particularly interesting is how their eating habits differ from our modern approach. You won't find them obsessing over protein shakes or eliminating entire food groups. Instead, they practice natural portion control, often following the Okinawan principle of hara hachibu, eating until you're 80% full. They also tend to eat their largest meal early in the day and their smallest in the evening, the opposite of what many of us do. But perhaps the most overlooked aspect of these longevity diets isn't what's on the plate, but how meals are experienced. In each blue zone, eating is inherently social. Meals are prepared with care, shared with loved ones, and eaten without the distraction of screens. Food isn't just fuel, it's a cornerstone of connection and community. So if you're looking to adopt eating habits that truly support longevity, consider this simple framework. Emphasize plants, particularly legumes. Don't fear whole grains and healthy fats like olive oil. Enjoy small amounts of fish. Limit meat and processed foods. And most importantly, share your table with people you love. Your body, and perhaps your lifespan, will thank you for it.